This is Super Yacht News with E. Sisman.
Hi, welcome back to the channel. So the parent company of Perini Navi, who built the ill-fated sailing yacht Bayesian, is suing the New York Times after the article about the sinking. We can assume that it's actually them suing and not a rogue lawyer this time. The Italian Sea Group issued a press release as to why they are suing and disputed many of the points made in the article released on the New York Times website on the 31st of October. The article written by the award-winning newspaper claimed the yacht had a number of design flaws which contributed to the sinking, citing many industry professionals such as naval architects and engineers. Now, we're not going to get into every aspect of the press release because it's quite long and detailed, but we're going to look at some of the points of that release. And of course, I will put a link to the full press release so you can read it if you so wish. Now, it's important to note that the Italian Sea Group purchased Perini Navi after the company went bankrupt in 2021, and the Bayesian was built in, I believe, 2008. In January 2021, TSIG, the Italian Sea Group, acquired from a bankruptcy auction the Perini Navi brand, the archives, and the real estate part of Perini Navi, and therefore cannot in any way be held responsible for the event possibly referable to the sinking. The company wants to take action against the American newspaper for the image damage referable to the brand and reputation of Perini Navi, so far a symbol of technological perfection and the highest expression of Italian yachting in the world. The Italian Sea Group has instructed lawyers to take action against the New York Times, saying the article was completely devoid of technical consistency without mentioning the source, which, if truly qualified, would have had no problem being quoted. Now, this is the first thing I have to take exception with in this. Now, the super yacht industry is cloaked in secrecy, and from day one of working in it, we're all indoctrinated into keeping everything secret. We're told not to name the owner of the yacht to anyone who asks, not to post on social media who the owner is, the location of the yacht, photos of the interior, or any details about it. Now, if you go back to the beginning of this channel, you'll see many videos I posted where I do not identify myself. And this was because I was so worried about my career in the industry because it was so secret. And I wanted to continue to work in the industry. I was worried that by identifying myself, I would struggle to get jobs in the future. I even had a yacht management company try to dox me online after I started reporting about the sanctions in 2022, which included disseminating information from my CV/resume. They did it because they believed it would hurt my chances of continuing to work in the industry in the future, right? That because of that secrecy. And we have many people contacting us with information, and almost all of them, I can't think of one that didn't mind actually being named, almost all of them say that they'll only give the information on the agreement that we would keep their identity secret. Even people who have retired from the industry have asked to keep their names anonymous, which tells you a lot of the stigma of speaking out. The idea that professionals who have careers in the yachting industry, providing they were truly qualified, would have no problems being named, it's just not true. Now, the first point they make in the press release, it says sloop versus ketch. The New York Times attributes the undocumented instability to the single mast design choice. The Bayesian, while having a stability curve slightly differing from a ketch, still fully and largely complies with the stability criteria set by the Marine Coast Guard Agency for commercial sailing vessels. Now, it's important to remember that point because we're going to come back to it about talking about the MCA and stability and it being approved. Now, the press release continues, point 5. Now, I'm going different points because they're connected. The ballast appears to have been pushed towards the rear of the vessel to compensate for the single heavy mast closer to the front, concluded Mr. Tad Roberts. He said that he had never seen main ballast used in such a design tactic before. That's a quote from the Times article within their press release. And then they say the fixed ballast was placed on the aft end of the skeg to balance the weight of the single mast, which was further forward than the sister ketch yachts. So the two-masted yachts, it was the extra ballast was added and it was added further aft. This arrangement did not in any way compromise the fixed ballast center of the gravity height on Bayesian. That is the center of gravity height on Bayesian. That's the press statement there. Now, we've had multiple sources tell us that the hull of the Bayesian was built exactly the same as other vessels in the range, the two-masted vessels. But the other yachts that were built before had those two smaller masts, where the Bayesian had one larger, heavier mast. Now, as a result of the larger single mast fitted to the Bayesian, they had to add extra ballast to the keel, as confirmed by the Italian Sea Group in their statement. So because of that extra 30 ton of ballast, the shell door on the port side was 100 millimeters lower to the waterline. Now, this is according to the former captain's statement released after the sinking. He said, the shell door was very close to the waterline. It was rarely used. Remembering the extra 30 ton of ballast mentioned earlier, this caused the waterline to be 100 millimeters higher than other 56 meter Pyrenees. So this statement seems to corroborate the same hull design was used, because if you design the hull for two smaller masts and then you later add the larger mast, you need to compensate for that extra weight and position. Now, that in itself is not a design flaw. It just points towards the hull was designed to be a two-masted hull rather than one single mast. Now, the press release continues. Point 6, a sunken deck reduced the buoyancy of the vessel, the naval architect said. Again, this statement is not supported by any further analysis or consideration. This arrangement can reduce buoyancy, but only at very high heel angles, and does not affect the regulatory stability requirements. Again, going back to the regulatory stability requirements. This area is also equipped with freeing port drains to drain any water that might become trapped there. So he's pointing out that drain on the side, although it looks like a damper for air inlet, it's actually for water to come out of those submerged loungers. However, if those drains were to become submerged, they would not act as freeing ports, would they? They would act as a way for the water to enter the vessel, would they not? So the press release continues, the stability booklet is MCA approved, therefore fully compliant with the applicable regulations, and that the angle of inclination at which the first significant opening immerses, causing the flooding of the yacht's engine room, is 42.7 degrees. It is emphasized that the openings are in any case protected by remotely controlled watertight closures. So they're pointing out there that the stability booklet was approved by the MCA. However, they do confirm that the first significant flooding angle of the yacht is not 88 degrees as previously said, but at 42.7 degrees. So that's very different from 88 degrees, which is the angle of vanishing stability. That's the point of heel where the vessel cannot right itself. The Italian Sea Group released a booklet to the Italian press, which we actually contacted them to ask them for details. They never replied to us. They've never replied to any of our emails. But they released a booklet, which we later got hold of, and it was released to the Italian press. They made an awful lot about the angle of vanishing stability, but they didn't mention the downflooding angle at all. It was completely omitted from that report that they released. And they point out that because the openings of the dampers to the engine room and the crew ventilation dampers are remotely controlled watertight enclosures, it means they were effectively, it seems to suggest in this press release that they're saying that they're irrelevant because they should have been closed. However, these dampers have to be open under normal circumstances because they're required to run the generators, right? The generators are running even if the yacht's at anchor because the vessel needs power for lighting and for the air conditioning, etc. So the AC dampers would also be open. And it also requires a crew member to physically go to those dampers in an emergency or to a remote location on the yacht. That's what they're saying, remote control dampers. What they mean is that somebody can control them from another place other than the actual dampers themselves. But it still means someone has to go there and do that. Now, from the accounts that we've heard from survivors of the sinking, the vessel went over very quickly. Some people saying it sank in a couple of minutes. If this is so, it seems almost impossible that anyone would have had time to go to close those dampers. Now, remembering if one was to decide to close them to be safe, let's just close them just in case, it would result in a blackout because they need to be open for the generators and they'd have to shut down. The generator would shut itself down if there's getting no air, and the AC would go off and all the lights would go out. Now, if we go back to the statement released by the former captain, when he spoke out about a week after the yacht sank, he says the downflooding angle is much more important in the scenario we're talking about. This is the angle of heel at which the water will start to enter the vessel, usually through the engine room or accommodation ventilation ducts. Once this starts, the vessel is in serious trouble as stability is quickly reduced or lost due to the flooding. The downflooding angle on the Bayesian was around 40 to 45 degrees. Well, now that the Italian Sea Group confirmed it was 42.7 degrees, so he's right, he was bang on, wasn't he? He says much less than the AVS, the angle of vanishing stability. So unless the vent dampers are closed, with HVAC systems and generators running, they would not be, as they need to be open for that. The vessel will start to flood rapidly if heeling more than the downflooding angle. Okay, so we'll go back to the press release, the final part of the press release. In light of the aforementioned technical considerations, the Italian Sea Group firmly reiterates the unsinkability of the Bayesian sailing yacht if properly sailed and operated. Again, putting blame for the sinking on the crew, and the crew alone, apparently. I think it's quite remarkable in the 21st century that a company is still maintaining that its vessel is unsinkable. Now, one of the things that the statement from the Italian Sea Group keeps going back to is that the vessel was within the limits for stability as per the MCA regulations. And that's understandable. The regulations are there to make the building of yachts safe for those who sail in here, right? However, there are incidents from the past that we can look to with regards to this. Motor Yacht Yogi, for instance, is a yacht that we covered in a previous video series called Super Yacht Investigations. I'll post a link if you want to watch that. We did them in 2020. Well, Motor Yacht Yogi sank in bad weather in 2012. It's the largest private motor yacht ever to sink. And the investigation, although not particularly conclusive to the cause of the sinking, had a section from the stability book in the final report. It was like an addendum to the stability book. And there does appear to be some similarities between Yogi and the Bayesian in terms of things done in the shipyard during the build, such as the extra ballast added to the vessel during construction, because the vessel appeared to be top heavy. I'm talking about the Yogi now. Yogi had been changed during the build with an extra deck and a larger mast of all things, which required extra ballast to be added to the yacht's hull, meaning that the vessel sat lower in the water than designed to do. These things sound familiar to what the former captain said of the Bayesian, right? Do they not? So this was taken from the Yogi final report, and like I said, it was an addendum to the stability booklet. It says stability calculation and results under the 16 loading conditions reported in the booklet were reviewed and approved by the class and flag authority prior to the delivery. They were all satisfied. So they're pointing out that the yacht was within requirements for approval by class. But then it goes on to say, nevertheless, many change and or modification requests during the project's evolution have had negative impact in the increase of the vessel's watertight and weight center of gravity, such as the enclosure of a sundeck, large windows, new large mast, sundeck bonnet, and many furnitures, etc. The current stability values have actually reached the minimum limits due to the current weight of the vessel. Therefore, it's strictly not advisable to add any more weight. So although Yogi was within the limits of the stability regulations, this paragraph is clearly stating that it's just inside of those calculations. So right now, the only thing we can all agree on is that we don't currently know why the Bayesian sank. Now, aviation and maritime accident reports often point to a combination of errors, possibly during the build, and or mistakes by the crew made that create the perfect storm for an accident to happen. The Italian authorities are currently working with the owners of the yacht, insurance companies, and the salvage companies to raise the vessel as part of that investigation. It does take time, but I'm sure we'll learn much more once the yacht has been raised. Obviously, we're going to bring you more as and when we have it. Now, I just want to say one more thing before I go, a bit of a personal thing, really. I've been doing this channel for quite a long time now, and in the last 3 years, I've effectively been working 2 jobs, and I haven't had any leave for 3 years. The most I've had is maybe 3 days off at once. So I'm pretty exhausted. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some time off. Probably it's going to be a week from today. So I'll be back a week on Monday. But yeah, I just wanted to let you know so you're not sort of kind of scratching your head wondering why there's been no videos. Unless, of course, something extreme happens, like a yacht is attacked by a giant octopus or something, then I'll be back. But otherwise, I'm going to take some time off. So I hope you understand. And like I said, I'll be back in just over a week. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll catch up with you soon. Bye-bye.